Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. I am here with the weekly forecast, the weekly astrology forecast for the week of December 7th through the 13th. We are in the waning phase of the moon. If you were able to catch the Lunar Herbal Alchemy Intensive yesterday, the theme that was discussed is this next week, just generally energetically, is about releasing. But I want to share the specific astrology that also, as always, things just seem to kind of fall into place and very much complement each other. And so this isn't a passive week. This is a week for, if there is a flow, it's a time for allowing course corrections to happen, making adjustments. And, there might be a little bit of refining, desire for precision, and maybe even some recalibration of what's true. And what's happening this week, just as an overview, is there's a sequence of adjustments that are coming through in sort of a wave. And the adjustments are about taking action versus um, pausing and being still. And it's about, feeling that impulse, but checking to make sure that that impulse is intuition and not fear. And so there's this dose of wisdom and destiny. And both Mars and Mercury are highly active this week. Mars is going to give us that motion sense. It might cause us to feel the challenge of maybe being a little frustrated when we have to pause. But that's what I love about astrology. When it's in the air, it's kind of easier to go with those flows. And Mercury also this week plays a really critical role. There's going to be this chance for us to get these new downloads and deeper perceptions. So this is a week, as I'm mentioning, it's not, passive. It's about maybe making some changes as the intuitive impulses come through. So let's start with December 7th, Sunday, December 7th, with three aspects. And this day is generally about adjustments and clarity and emotional calibration. The first thing that happens in the morning, it already happened because today's December 7th. At 5 a.m., we have Mars quincunx Jupiter. And so this is kind of a subtle but persistent friction. But the friction is between momentum and emotional safety. And Mars in Sag wants forward movement, is comfortable with risk, and is desiring expansion. Jupiter in Cancer wants protection, wants emotional comfort and containment. So the quincunx is a cause for adjustment. And so there's this recalibration already right at the start of the day. And so the question here is, let's check in to make sure that we're doing things, as I mentioned, instead of acting out of fear, acting out of anxiety, acting out of clarity, acting out of knowing. So that's the kind of wisdom of the start of the day, but it carries through the day. By the time I'm recording this right now, that this energy is already stabilized because we have Mercury now trining Saturn around noon on Sunday. So this is going to help us feel that emotional sobriety, that clarity. And we're going to be able to do this sort of longer term thinking, longer term planning. And this makes this part of the day a really great day for planning, but you could also make it for writing or recording or conversing, creating. And what this day is gonna bring is this sense of wisdom and integrity and clarity. And then by this evening, we have Venus sesquiquadrate Jupiter, and that's going to kind of help us feel pulled towards reassurance seeking, but also it's going to give us a pause to make sure that we're not just grasping at something because we're a little nervous. So this is a discernment day in general, and it's teaching us the idea of emotional moderation, but authenticity and self-truth. So the theme, as I'm mentioning, is definitely about having that inner sense of whether or not we're doing something impulsively because we're acting out of fear, and whether or not we're doing something because we're getting an emotional hit or an intuitive hit. That's the most expedient way forward. Monday, December 8th is about power and pressure. We have um two aspects, and the first one is kind of I would offer the bigger one of the day. It's the sun is going to be semi-square to Pluto. These aspects are all taking place in the evening, by the way. And so this is kind of this sense of pressure beneath the surface. And we might feel like aware of something that is a hidden truth. We might be able to sense what's going on beyond the 3D word and gesture. You know how when you're in a space and somebody's saying one thing, but you know they're meaning another? That's what's happening today. And so there's might be some tension there. This might be about power dynamics. But even though we might feel like we want to assert control, Pluto's going to remind us that we're always in control. And truth is the way that we're in control, our truth and seeing the truth. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a combative day, but the other aspect is going to make it this is a little bit of a tension day. Mars is squaring Saturn pretty immediately after the sun is semi-square to Pluto. So this is the primary friction point for the entire week, and I would offer that it is that because of the sun was semi-square Pluto just before this happens. And so that Pluto semi-square sun is keying up Mars squaring Saturn. And so this Mars wants movement, Saturn wants the brakes. Those are two different energies. So it can feel like forcing versus patience was what I was mentioning, one of the themes for the week. I could feel like we're blocked or stopped. The key here is the flows are about the bigger picture that I'm talking about. That's what December's all about, the bigger picture. This is the final month of 2025. So there is a lot of sense of closure here. And if something isn't going as expected, we can remember this is the practice that there's if something isn't flowing the way we want it to, it's because the universe knows that there's a more expedient way, and we in our humble human 3D rational mind might not see all the different ways that things can work out for us. So the idea here is that where we feel restricted is where we're being reshaped for the longer term, the bigger picture. So to be present in that energy and to trust that everything is always working out. Everything is always working out for me as a good mantra as we're practicing patience at the beginning of the week. But I mentioned that this aspect is like kind of the wash of color through the whole week. By the time we get to Tuesday, December 9th, that there's going to feel a little bit more of a expansion because Sun is by quintile Jupiter, and that's going to feel like a creative expansion. And this is if Monday had that tension, internal or external, today's going to kind of have some more subtle energy. And this is about spiritual knowing or inner knowing. There's going to be that deep knowing that we can grow without applying force. And that was kind of what was keyed up yesterday, right? And so this is a sense that we're going to get that sense that things are working out, even if we can't see the outcome. But the nice little thing, even if we can't really feel that everything is always working out for me on Monday, by Tuesday, we're going to be like, oh, I think that kind of makes sense. So there might be this sense of optimism or this sense of quiet momentum, the sense of that the subtle energies are where our strength is at. So this is the medicine here is about trusting without feeling that there's an urgency about anything at all. And then on Wednesday, the 10th, this is a day of revelation because Uranus is active, but also there's a kind of a nervous system awakening. We also have Mercury's active and Chiron's active here. So Mercury is opposing Uranus midday. So this is a breakthrough transit. I've mentioned that Uranus is uh, a pro at that. So sudden insights, unexpected news. Uranus moves above and beyond linear space and time. Uranus is kind of the earthquake energy. So there's this disruptive thing about it, but exclamation point or dot dot dot. This is about the expediency, right? So if something wasn't flowing at the start of the week the way we wanted it to, it's because the universe knows that there's something better out there, and Uranus is that lightning bolt that moves beyond linear time and space. So this might feel a little bit startling at first. But what's happening is our old assumptions are kind of already being keyed up to be ready to crack away. To stay with Uranus, this aspect is going to help us release. So it might feel a little bit shaky, but also it's because things are moving faster, and that's why I mentioned the nervous system. We're going to do a nervous system meditation here this week. And that's just because, as I mentioned, Uranus is lifting us up and out of linear space and time. And that's exciting, but it's also like all of a sudden we're used to going 10 miles an hour and now we're going 600 miles an hour. Not forever, but that's how it might feel. And by the evening, we have Mercury biquintile Chiron. So this is kind of where if there was any kind of shocking energy at the start of the day, this is going to integrate it into the healing energy of Chiron. But with Mercury, the words are going to become the medicine. But, Mercury is not just words, the vibration becomes the medicine, the thoughts become the medicine. The insight that we have is going to be the healing balm. And that there might be this insight that we suddenly have an aha moment of like, oh, this is why this disruption happened. This is why something needed to change. And so this is about um, being willing to be a part of a healing, internal healing, external healing. This is kind of the healing passageway of the week. By the time we get to Thursday, we have there's some spiritual clarity, there's some relational crossroads. We have Venus squaring the North Node. And this is a karmic checkpoint here. The North Node is where we're headed, right? And Venus is about, balance, karma, harmony, justice. But really this squaring is going to help us realize that we're leaving the old world. So there may be this tension between what feels emotionally familiar to us and what feels spiritually necessary. And I think you already get the sense of where the North Node wants us to go. It's not about holding on to the same old ways of doing things just because that's the only way we know how to do them. This is about trusting the flows and being here for it. This is not a punishment. I think there's this deep internal knowing for those of us who are in this circle of astrology and energy healing. We're really seeking that support in being in the flow and not, being in the world but not being of it. So I think one of the questions that could be active on Thursday when we think about what we're doing is what I'm doing supporting an avoidance, or is it supporting my becoming? Again, the theme is, am I acting out of fear or am I acting out of trust? So this is kind of a theme for the month. It's definitely a theme for the week. It's a theme for this part of the lunation. We also have Mercury trining Neptune here. And so this is going to give us some intuitive clarity. It's going to help our insight become symbolic. It's also going to, help us understand that confusion is answered not by logic, but by feeling. So it's worth noting here, though, that the the Venus square the North Node that happens at like 1 a.m. That happens while we're sleeping, if we're talking about Pacific time, and then this Mercury trine Neptune happens like around 6 a.m. So there might be some of this aspects of things happening in our dreams or happening in our intuitive insights. So the bulk of the day, if there was any unsettled subconscious stuff that came through in the early morning or in the middle of the night, there's going to be this sense that these are spiritual communications. These are insights from our higher self, that there's this sense that there's coherence even as we're moving through transformation. And then the next aspects, Friday, we don't have too much going on. Saturday, we have Mars quincunx Uranus and Mercury sextiling Pluto. And so that's going to be a interesting balance between instability and empowered truth. When Mars is quincunxing Uranus, I already talked about Uranus and this sense of volatile energy, right? Quincunx is a challenge. So there's Mars might help us or not help us, but make us feel a little bit unsettled or, kind of ready to move beyond something that feels like it no longer serves or it's confusing for us. But the key here is when Mars is unsettling us to be in our center, to be in the subtle energy of it all, and to not be reactive. Because this energy is asking for flexibility versus rebellion. So Mars is in its downfall when it's super duper hot, right? But Mars is in its exaltation when it's agency and it's empowered action and it's clarity. And so, we're not going to be rigid and, rebellious. We're going to be responsive and flexible. And the movements that we have are going to be movements for the purpose of liberation. Mercury is also sextile Pluto around 11:30 on Saturday, and this is kind of going to close the week with this sense of mental depth, internal knowing, and there's this precision about it. There's this potential for having those big aha moments, those profound moments of insight, and maybe even this sense of having transformational conversations or telepathic conversations. Um, we may understand something or have a download that kind of permanently changes how we see someone or something, but even more importantly, how I see ourselves. So this day is when it's going to help us restore our sense of agency afterward. This week that we're going through is a week with some pressure points, as I mentioned. So the first couple days are about adjustment and restraint. Then in the middle of the week, we have that spiritual aha. Our confidence returns. We have that breakthrough. But then also toward the end of the week, there's a karmic redirection. There's intuitive clarity, and then there's an um, reclaimed power. So just know this week that you're not being blocked. You're being re-engineered. You're being reoriented. And so we can trust this week that the aspects are showing it to us when resistance happens, that it's because there's some kind of more uh, potent structure being built. And even if something feels surprising or shocking, which is a stronger word, I like surprising, but it's because there's a truth being uncovered or introduced. And if we feel uncomfortable, know that it's kind of helping us return to our sense of personal empowerment, return to our sense of who we really are and why we're really here. All right, guys, have a blessed week. I will follow this up with a meditation for everybody to support us in these energies. Bright blessings.